Hi there, I'm Timothy Linsdau, video producer and a Christian, putting on my science and concerned citizens cap today on what's going on with fires and plastics and renewable resources. Anyway, this article starts out with all the big fires. In the last 12 years, California's had 8 of its 10 biggest fires in the last 12 years. Like and comment on my videos, subscribe to my channel if you would. So the issue is, of course, global climate change. How much is that affecting it, or is it affecting it? That argument continues. Not even sure it's worth approaching. Everybody's got an opinion, including the scientists, which I've heard multiple ones. On it goes. I did a film on Otay Mountain some time back. 20 years ago, close to it. And the fires that had happened up there, the interesting part about fires, and I learned this when I lived in Wyoming, common tree in Wyoming is a lodgepole pine. And it has a closed cone, really hard cone. And in fact, the Forest Service would ask you to collect them so that they could use them to make seedlings. But naturally, the cone requires a lot of heat for it to break open. It actually takes fire. And on Otay Mountain, the Teton cypress tree, which is somewhat rare, it also has a very hard, round cone that requires fire to open. The only problem with that is in areas that get constant fire, the trees aren't allowed to mature to the point of reproductive maturity, if you will. And that creates an issue. So in California, we've had multiple things. Power companies shutting off power during windstorms to prevent fires from sparking overhead power lines. And the argument about what it would do now, how are we going to solve that problem? And that goes on and on and on. Some argue Stanford's Michael Wara spoke of the future energy in a changing climate in a recent event, and he's making the point, can't we, all the things we have to do that we need money for, how are we going to solve that? Can we just raise power, electricity rates? He makes the point, it probably wouldn't have any decent effect as more and more people will buy solar and batteries and try to get themselves somehow off the grid more, so you wouldn't make any headway doing that. So the arguments go on and on and on. In numerous issues with the power goes on and on. And the thing about solar, let's talk about that a little bit. Solar power, these solar panels, a lot of them are made with a lot of plastic. And I've discussed this before. There's not really a recycling program for the millions of solar panels being made and put to use. And what do we do about that? Plastic has become a big deal, banning straws and plastic bags at stores. But each one of these becomes a compromise. I worked in grocery stores for years in management, and I can remember starting out as a young kid. We used to use string to wrap the flaps on boxes because we put groceries in boxes. Now, if you go to Costco today, you'll see that again. It's kind of a return to the old days, using boxes for bags. Now, of course, we try to get these reusable bags. Some are recyclable. Shouldn't say that. Some reusable in the sense that if you're using cloth, you should wash them for hygiene reasons. I remember in the store that really bothered a lot of checkers when that started, because they said the bags were dirty and not cared for properly and was not a hygienic situation. The reusable bags that we get at the store, they're really heavy plastic, which means more pollution than the thin bags. But the thin bags was the sheer number of them, I suspect, versus the ones we use over and over. But it's still a larger plastic that's in it. I mentioned the problem with solar panels and plastic. Plastic is heavily used in the panels. in the shipping process of palletizing, in the wrapping. They'll wrap them in plastic. So there's just mountains of plastic being produced, used in the solar world. So that goes on. And I've discussed about when we use wind power, the massive amount of metal that takes to build one tower, and the pollution, CO2 we create to make that stuff. Does that go into the process of understanding? Are we winning or losing this battle in any way? And it brings up so many things. I started taking a look at light bulbs. Now, all of you, or many of you, will remember when they started to stop producing incandescent bulb. Now, the incandescent bulb was almost nearly a century in use, give or take, and invented by Thomas Edison. It used a thin globe of glass with tungsten and an inert gas in the bulb, usually argon, and produced light for decades and decades. Well, it was comparatively inefficient from what came next. It was the compact fluorescent bulbs. That was invented back 70s. And it took much less power for the light that you got out of it. I use fluorescence in my lighting here. Cool, uses low power, and that type of thing. But they have a mercury gas in them that makes them work, and of course if you break them, that's released, and I've been through that process. They're very fragile. So that can happen. Throw away the bulbs, there's some amount of mercury in there that's a pollutant, phosphorus, some, and the glass. Well, of course, glass is made out of sand, and that's not as much a pollutant. There is metal, of course, in there, but that is usually easily broken down or recycled. But now the compact fluorescent is being outdated, and so slowly but surely we've got the power consumption thing sorted out, so it's much better. Now the LED light, and that particular lamp uses very little power for the amount of light you get, and I've used those in video in numbers of ways, and now you're beginning to see them in everything, and which is great. Uses less power, get good light. I've done quite a bit of camping, and you have the LED headlamps, and the great part about them is they're light, use little power, and they have great intensity for their size. But then comes up an issue. Most of these, if not all of these LEDs, are made out of plastic. If you go down and you want to replace your incandescent bulb in your lamp, and you go down and you get a comparable LED bulb, it's pretty heavy plastic. Well, okay, so now we're replacing the incandescent compact fluorescent with the LED, and the LED is loaded with plastic. It's encased in plastic, or in a looks like a light bulb, but it's a plastic just to cover the elements and protect the electronics. And actually, from what I've seen, you can actually, if you cut the plastic bulb and it reveals the electronics in there, it actually works more like spotlight. But I don't know if you want to mess with that or not. But so there we are. Everything we keep trying has a compromise. And since these things are so driven by politics, politicians, and activists, there's little time to get through these things and figure these things out. Now that global warming or climate change has become such a big deal, there's a huge rush. And where are we going with it? We'll actually end up compromising ourselves, maybe making it worse. If the one thing about free enterprise, it helps because what you do in business has to be profitable in some way to stay in business. So you give an extra effort to testing and preparing the use of this technology or product you've come up with. A lot of thought, is required to make that happen. So you know what? Let's give this stuff some thought. Let's think about it and work on it. Yes, figure out ways to make it better without compromising and wrecking all of our efforts. So give it some thought. Like and comment my video, subscribe to my channel, and get out there, figure it out, and make it a great day.